more love, more joy, everything.
It's inspired young people.
Inspiration comes from within you. When you clear out the garbage that's in your mind, you then create space for something better, more beautiful to come in.
Let's have life and have it more abundantly.
I say yes.
It's like taking a workshop. I get to be in my pajamas.
We have a very active imagination, which is why it's important to learn how to harness it and then point it in the direction you want to go.
I listen to your show every day.
It's time now for Living Your Inspired Life with Susan Burrell. Susan is no-nonsense, inspirational, motivational, and fun.
This is positive talk radio.
Practical wisdom for everyday life.
It's a gift you give yourself.
Now, here's Susan.
And welcome to Living Your Inspired Life. I'm Susan Burrell, and you're listening to News Talk 1590 KVTA. And before we dive into the conversation today, I want to invite you to go to the website, livingyourinspiredlife.org. We have amazing conversations, transformational conversations, and dialogues with some really awesome people that are just doing incredible work in the world, and there's just a plethora of information there. So it is livingyourinspiredlife.org, and you can email me through there if you've got questions or ideas. I'm happy to listen. So with that being said, I am very happy and honored to have a woman who I admire and respect on the show with me today. I want to welcome Byron Katie. Welcome, Byron.
Hi, Susan. Thank you. Thank you for having me on today.
I am very grateful. Now, I want to tell our listeners before we dive in, you were on the show a few years ago, and we talked about your book, Loving What Is, which is the basis of what you call the work. And I want to tell everybody, at the time that you and I talked, Byron, a few years ago, I had just started a support group with some other moms dealing with our young teenage boys who were, investigating all sorts of different things like drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. And all of us were having a come apart and how do we do this? And so we established the circle, and I brought Loving What Is, and all of us did the work around our kids and loving what is and asking the questions that we'll be talking about today. And it really helped each of us to navigate what was going on with our kids in a new kind of out-of-the-box thinking way. So I'm deeply grateful for that.
Isn't it just it's so simple on one hand, and on another hand, it takes a lot of self-honesty. But it's wonderful to watch our children grow. When we understand ourselves, we understand them, and we're more supportive that way. We're more on the same page.
Yeah, and I like what you said about self-honesty, because really what you are all about is working from the inside out. What's true for me as the individual, not what is going on outside of me that's affecting me.
Yes, because when I know myself, the arguments with my children, grandchildren, the people in my life, my husband, it falls away because I'm just so inclined to listen, and that grows me, that expands me, and I get to learn more about them when my mouth is shut.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah, it's magical. It's magical.
And it is about listening, and it's about listening on a deep level. I think a lot of people that when you become a parent, you think you're supposed to tell your kid what to do.
When we ourselves don't necessarily know what to do.
Right.
And it's really confusing for us. What comes out of us is really confusing for our children, and they're already confused enough. So we're all lost, sometimes.
Well, it's interesting. One of the things that popped out as I was revisiting your book, Loving What Is that idea of, I saw, it was a sentence I had underlined so many years ago, where you said, I realized that I could be right or I could be free. And that right there is the truth. Let's speak a little bit about what that is, because I think a lot of people want to be right, that's the reflection they're looking for of, am I right? am I living my life correctly?
But when our children are speaking to us, using that example again, when our children are speaking to us and we're positive they're completely wrong in what they're saying, do we want them to be right? Are we just quiet enough to listen so that they can follow through with what they're saying, or do we interrupt? I mean, if I want, and it shows me when I listen to them all the way through where I was wrong or where we agree and we already have it in common.
Right.
It's just, it's a wonderful process. It's like, I don't want to be right. I want to be aware of what's going on with my family. And when I believe I'm right, I'm in that I know mind, and so I'm going to argue it. I'm going to defend my stance. I'm going to defend what I'm thinking and believing. And so they really don't have a chance with me.
Right, because you're not listening.
Yes. But then what I perceive, yes, then they're right in that. Yeah, but if I interrupt them, I don't get to know who they are. I don't get to know their point of view. I don't get to, again, more importantly, I don't get to grow and learn my child.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because I've recently done some work with some partners, and it's fascinating to observe when they are having a conversation, they're both saying almost the same thing, just using different words. Mm-hmm. And they think there's a conflict because they're really just not listening. One person is not listening. The other person's trying to prove their point. Mm-hmm. It's not even, they're not even playing tennis, they're not even on the same court.
Yeah.
Yet they're saying the exact same thing and wanting the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. So, which takes us to, if there's a family member that's clear enough to just be quiet and still enough to witness what's going on with both of those two people you just described, the two in the argument, then that person witnessing sees those similarities. And then when the coast is clear, when things kind of level out, that person can say, what I noticed is that you were saying, and then they can repeat it, and you were also saying, and you can repeat it. And so those similarities, it's really just even a quiet listener for those of us that have trouble. We don't want to interrupt family feuds. We don't want to be a part of it, etc. But just in that quiet space, we're able to pick up exactly what we're saying and give them those common denominators, and it just levels the field.
Yeah, I've witnessed that. It's awesome, actually, when people can slow down enough to listen.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you say in your book, Loving What Is our parents, our children, our spouses, and our friends will continue to press every button we have until we realize what it is we don't know about ourselves. Mm-hmm. They point us to our freedom every time. I love that statement because, boy, has that been my experience. Every button.
Oh, isn't it true? Oh, my gosh. If there's a problem in my family, I look to myself. And that's where it started inside of me, and that's where it's ended inside of me. And maybe it's one of those arguments in the family that I'm just witnessing. If I'm angry at one or the other or both of them, then I've got this war going on inside of me. And that's where it started. My judgments about them is where it started. And so recognizing that, I'm in touch with what I'm thinking and believing, and I take care of that. And then again, I'm that witness, that clear one that can give back to them those similarities.
Okay, so let's back up then here, because there's a place with what you just said of that it begins and ends within me, that I think is a hard concept for lots of people to comprehend, especially when you're looking outside of yourself and thinking that and I'm pointing a finger now, I'm pointing a finger over there, but that person is the one that's doing it to me. Mm-hmm. So let's speak a little bit more about that, of how it begins and ends within me.
That's what we believe, but it's what I'm thinking and believing about that person that is causing the stress in me. No one can hurt me. No one can stress me out. It's what I'm thinking and believing about that person or situation that stresses me out. And that is 100% it. And when we know that about ourselves, we know enough about ourselves to straighten it out from where it began, and that's, again, within ourselves. For example, if I have the thought, let's say he doesn't care about me, for example.
Mm-hmm.
If I have that thought, he doesn't care about me. If I believe that thought, when he walks into the room, I'm going to meet him with anger or a facade or something that is, it's either going to, anyway, I'm in pain.
Right.
I'm in pain. I'm stressed out. And I may take it out on him, and it's no more than what I'm thinking and believing. And maybe he does or doesn't, but I don't know. I'm really guessing. So if I take that to inquiry, for example, he doesn't care about me, is it true? Can I really know that it's true? And then notice how I react, how I treat him, and how that feels within myself when I believe that thought. And then when I ask myself, I get still and just see him without the thought. Who would I be without that thought? And just witness him. And he's saying, "Good morning, honey." And my thoughts were, yeah, after what he said, he was so unkind, blah, 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 in my head going on. And all he said is, "Good morning, honey."
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm thinking and believing is that static that overrides reality. And so I'm just in that fourth question. The work is 4 questions. And who would I be without the thought? I can hear that good morning. I'm able to take it in and then turn around. He doesn't care about me. He does care about me. And then I can take a look at what that might mean to me, what could be as true or truer than what I'm believing. And then I could also include him in my secret world. For example, honey, do you care about me?
Right. One of the things I pulled out of your book, again, Loving What Is that it's your thinking about them that's your problem, your uninvestigated
Mm-hmm.
belief about what they think or don't think.
Mm-hmm.
And I love your phrase, uninvestigated belief, because the work is all about, like you said earlier, inquiry and asking these questions. Is it true? Can I absolutely know it's true? What are the reactions I have to that thought? And who would I be without that thought? So it's any one of those things. If you just sit down and ask even one of those questions, it begins to
powerful.
Excavate what you believe.
Yes. Einstein said an uninvestigated life is not worth living.
Yeah.
And, oh my gosh, I'm so blessed to have discovered that almost 30 years ago. And it's so freeing to know what questions to ask, how to investigate. And so the work is how. And it's certainly flying through the world now. It's everywhere. I love that people have an opportunity just to know that it exists, so that when they are out of sorts or having difficulty in their lives, that they can go to thework.com. I'll say it, thework.com, and it's all there. Everything of value that we're talking about is there free on thework.com. And,
So, Byron, let's talk a bit about judgment, because that's also the thing that gets in everyone's way. Well, that's the whole bottom line of having beliefs about things, like what you were saying about he doesn't care about me. That's a judgment.
Yes, it's a judgment, and it's just those judgments. They're really nothing unless we believe them. And if there's any part of us that believes them, then that is the cause of stress.
Mm-hmm.
It is the disconnect and separation we feel from our family members and from the rest of the world. It's where it's the cause of feeling alone, being alone. It's the total cause of loneliness.
Because we judge people, and then what we're doing is pushing them away or pushing ourselves away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A judgment like he's cruel, and he is out to lunch. He's in denial. He doesn't care. Any of those judgments, or he did it wrong, or there's something the matter with him. For any of those judgments, and those are all so common, and we experience them in every language on the planet, everywhere we are. They're the universal beliefs, and they're very popular and very separating. But we have the ability to question those judgments and be free of them, and then act out of knowledge. And knowledge joins. We don't have to be angry to solve problems in this world. The creative mind comes out of those places where actually we're out of judgment, out of those negative judgments that the ego's believing. And that's the ego's trick. It's got to judge constantly to stay identified.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just natural that it would do it. But once we realize that, we'll call it the ego's trick, then it begins to cooperate completely.
Okay, so speak a little bit about that because I've been having conversations with people that believe that the ego is the nemesis, right? And therefore has to be eradicated, as opposed to what it sounds like you're saying of once you understand how it operates, you can...
Well, once you understand it, my words are, once the mind meets itself with unconditional love,
mm-hmm.
then, the war is over. Because the mind is simply, with the ego, the mind is simply looking for a home in itself, just to understand itself, self-realization. So I don't know how to say it any more clearly than that, when the mind understands itself, and that's what happens when the mind is questioning what it believes, then, that meeting it with unconditional love without war, just simple inquiry, then it begins to rest. Mm-hmm. And it sees its way home, and it just can't wait to go there. The ego is not an enemy. It's not this dreadful, terrible thing. I see it as an unruly, confused child just looking for a place to rest.
Right, and if you can love yourself beyond, like you're saying, that place of uncondition, of non-judgment, then the ego calms down and is like, oh, good, somebody was listening. Okay, I don't have to jump up and down and yell and scream.
That's it.
Which goes back to what we were talking about earlier, about just being quiet and listening.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It's interesting to also, Byron, because, this morning I had a lovely breakfast with some friends, and we were talking about the paradox of life, where you can be experiencing profound sadness as well as exquisite happiness, all at seemingly the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Because so many people are going through life transitions that are, at least right now, it feels like in how I am interacting and watching and observing people that I work with and friends and colleagues and stuff, that there's not just one change, but several that are happening all at once. Like, for instance, I have a friend whose two sons just moved out of the house at the same time that somebody approached her to buy her family home, and she's selling, and all in the same 2-day span.
Mm.
And, I have...
Talk about a tidal wave.
I know. And then I have another friend whose father just made his transition, and her son within the same time frame is moving out to go to college, and she's, changing her house again. It's like...
Goodness.
Not any single one person that was at that table had just one little transition going on.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh.
So to live in this life of paradox, it sounds like the work would support that, because it seems like that's where we're living now, is in that place of it's not. Maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't feel like there's any one thing that's happening. It's all happening in multiples. And I think what used to be is that you used to think, okay, once I get all this done, then I can be happy. Or then, life will be good, or then I'll have enough money, or whatever it is.
Yeah,
but,
and then we get all of that, and then we get the next lesson. These things only happen as we're ready for it.
Right.
As needed. And that's why the people in our lives are so important, because they give us what's next. What's next to work on in my experience, with inquiry. They give me what's next. And everything I think and believe about their situation, my situation, if it's not beautiful, then if it doesn't fall into Einstein's, he said that the universe is friendly. And that's what I discovered so many years ago, and I've been testing it all this time. And if I don't see the universe as friendly, there's something off in the way I see it. And the way I'm seeing it is I see what I believe. And if we don't believe it, we can't even see it. To see requires believing. So to question what I'm thinking and believing, it frees me up. And then, as you described with your friends, we just need the next teacher. What's left? Going home just as quickly as we can once we know how to deal with it.
Well, and the thing I like about what you do, the work that you do, and it is all about going back to love.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, the unconditional love, and all about it. So even in those maelstorms of seeming chaos, as life makes all these different changes, or we make all these different changes, really, the real true north, or the true anchor, if you will, is that place of open-hearted love, regardless of what's occurring.
Yes, and then until we, as long as we believe our thoughts, our stressful thoughts, then we cannot see. We only see what we are believing about life. We don't see life. We don't see reality or understand its true nature, because we're not in touch with our own in those moments.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, how people's thoughts and beliefs about things become so... I'm seeing a vine, that's just twisted and gnarly, and is, totally stuck to a wall, and people don't even realize that that's what they're living with inside themselves.
Yeah, it's wonderful taking responsibility for all of our stress, and once we know how to deal with it, it's easy to take responsibility for it. In fact, it becomes something we really look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if my mother said, Katie, you did it wrong, there is zero problem there until the moment I believe it.
Right. Yeah.
So I can never blame my mother for saying, she hurt my feelings. I can never do that, because responsibility tells me now that the moment I believed it is when the pain started. It didn't start with her saying it. So now I look to myself. And the way that I take care of that is I question it. I did it wrong. I'm 72 now. Okay, I was 15 years old. I did it wrong. Is it true? Can I absolutely know that it's true? And I'm not going to say, can she absolutely know that it's true? Because that, I'm looking to my own. I'm taking responsibility for my own thoughts now. Can I absolutely know that it's true, that I did it wrong? And then I am in that situation just as closely as I can be, as I remember it, and then notice how I react when I believe the thought. Well, in that moment, literally, it's like I cut my mother off. So in that moment, it's like I became motherless. I began to judge her. I blamed her for my pain, and depending on how we believe it, we can become traumatized in it. these things last a long time. And if we're really young and we believe, let's say our mother said you did it wrong, and we really believed it, we carry that the rest of our life with every human being.
Right.
Because we're carrying that belief within ourselves. And it is never too late just to sit down and question that thought, just being in that situation, as we recall it, and then, notice how I react when I believe this thought, how I treated her, how that felt in me, and then who would I be without the thought? So I'm there with my mother, I'm 16, who would I be without the thought I did it wrong? And I see a woman trying to help me, trying to point out an error that she sees so that I don't have to experience it again. She's mothering me. She's teaching me. That's what was going on with her. It looks to me as I look back at it now. So there's I'm free. She's free in my mind now. And I began, rather than I'm separate from her, I'm connected with her. And then when I turn it around, I did it wrong. Turned around, I did it right. And then I began to look at where I did it right, and I see what I did. It was right for me. It wasn't right for her, maybe. Maybe that's what I see.
Uh-huh.
Or I did it right, and in doing it wrong in that situation, it connected me with my mother today, and my mother's not even alive. So, that wrong is right with me right in this moment, and without that, I couldn't feel this intimacy. So we're really meditating on those opposites as we, so the work, 4 questions, and we look at that statement, we find opposites, and then we contemplate those, and it opens us up to a world that we miss. In this case, it's 16, and then everything from 16 on up shifts. It's like dominoes just falling. And then when someone says, Katie, you did it wrong, I just, it's like, oh my goodness, I remember when I used to believe that too. And I look at that person as like, just simply doing what I've done. And
so as you're describing this, Katie, what I'm hearing is that that the work in a sense is a way to change your past.
Completely.
Because you can see it differently.
Yes, and when the past changes, everything in the future changes, because the future is nothing. It cannot even possibly happen without these perceptions of the past.
Mm-hmm.
So as those past situations shift through inquiry, we lose the need, the psychological need to even be, or even the ability to perceive a future, because we understand fully it's a friendly universe, so it's not necessary. It absolutely ceases to be necessary to project, and that's how peaceful a mind can become. It's a beautiful thing. And so it lives out of this knowledge and creativity, and it's a fearlessness that allows one to accomplish anything that it has the ability to do. Even if they can't do it physically, it knows how to compensate for that and include others, because it's entirely inclusive.
Right.
We're unstoppable, but what we're thinking and believing, I can't do it, or what will they think of me? What if I fail? Or these thoughts that keep us from living our lives in a most profound way. We're not limited. It's what we're thinking and believing that is limiting.
I totally agree with that. In fact, that's how I live my life, is in choosing self-responsibility and self-love and self-compassion and things like that.
It keeps us busy.
Yeah. But it also, but also the idea that so as you're sharing this conversation about your mom and that we live in a friendly universe, I was called to think about my mom, and my mom does not believe that. She does not believe that we live in a friendly universe. In fact, I had a conversation with her last week. They're remodeling their bathroom. Well, the carpet guy hasn't shown up to lay the carpet, so it's against her,
Yeah.
She thinks that I mean, I don't think she thinks he's doing it on purpose that he hasn't shown up yet, but she's like, that just happens to me all the time. And I'm thinking, really? Really, does it happen to you all the time? And I'm never going to get this thing done because they aren't showing up. I'm like, wow.
Yeah. Well, that's the life of a believer.
Right.
It's just that simple. There are believers, and the Buddhists refer to this world, this imagined world that we live in, like you just described your mother. They always do that. This always happens to me. But these illusions that we're buying prior to investigation, it's Buddhists refer to it, I think, as a life of suffering. Like the world is a world of suffering, but it's simply an illusion. We're believing our thoughts. It's not that serious, and we can't identify what we're thinking and believing in any given moment of stress, and write it down on paper, and then sit in inquiry, question what we were believing at that when we were so stressed out, and set ourselves free, and it shifts everything.
Well, I really recommend the work because it is about taking time. See, this is the thing, everybody that's listening. It's about taking the time to really do the investigation, and what you're saying, Katie, is to take time to write it down. Now, if my mom were to actually take time to write down what she thinks about the guy that hasn't shown up with the carpet for her bathroom, and to really see, is that real? Is that true?
Yeah, is it true? And to notice what happens to her emotionally, and how she treats the people around her, how she treats you on the phone.
She keeps herself up at night thinking about it. I kid you not. And I am sure there's lots of people out there listening that do the same thing. They start thinking about something at 2 a.m. and thinking it's real, and they just dive into it.
Yeah, and our life becomes about staying glued to what we're believing as though it's going to help us in some way, but of course, the opposite is true. It keeps us awake nights.
Yeah, I like what you just said about staying glued to what we think is true, because it sure gets very myopic, very narrow focus, so that you can't even see that there might be other solutions to whatever you're worrying about.
And those solutions come in the turnaround, and they come in. There's a judgment worksheet. I call it a Judge Your Neighbor worksheet, and it's free on thework.com. No one has to sign up for anything. It's completely anonymous. But you can print it out and then fill it in, and it helps people identify what they're thinking and believing in a specific situation. So it simplifies it for people, and it's such a help. Like, your mom could just print one of those out if her mind were open to it, and just go back to that place where she believed that this just happens all the time, and just fill it in that moment, and question it. And it's all there to make it as simple as possible for anyone that wants to get free, who's heartbroken and just at a terrible loss. If we're out on the streets, you already know, if we're on the street and we have no family, we have no money, we have anything, we can be free. Everyone listening to us right now, I love that they know that, if they don't have arms or legs, if they're blind, it just doesn't matter. Freedom is our birthright. And it's just a matter of identifying what we're thinking and believing and question it, those stressful thoughts, and to set ourselves free. If we had to have like this perfect life, this comfortable life, before we can be okay, then, that's not reasonable. We can do it from here, whatever position we find ourselves.
Right. And what I'm hearing you say as you're saying that, Katie, is that the real freedom comes from the inside out. It's not, somebody doesn't give it to you. It comes from the inside out.
Yeah. That way it is handy dandy. We don't have to wait for it. It's always available, which is what we always wanted.
Yeah.
And it really shows us that other than what we're thinking and believing, we're okay.
Boy, wouldn't that be a weight off everybody's shoulders?
Yeah, I just love that I just love that there's, that we have the ability to find our way, each of us.
Yeah. So can we talk more about turnarounds in the work? Because I remember when I had the support group and we were going through your book, Loving What Is. When we got to the part of the turnarounds, this was a few years ago again, it was hard for me to comprehend really how to do it and how to get behind turning the belief around and believing something different.
So let's go back to my mother said I did it wrong. And turnaround would be I did it wrong. So I'm just finding an opposite. Okay, so I did it right. So that's the opposite of I did it wrong. So I did it right. Okay, so where was it in that situation that what I was doing was right? Maybe it was right for me. And I began to just explore. Or let's see, let's get one more tangible. It would be like, let's say one of my children were doing drugs, and I was really frightened, and so I tested. Let's say they're doing drugs, and then I turn it around. One opposite would be they're not doing drugs. Well, okay, they're asleep in their bedroom right now, so they're not taking drugs right now because I'm standing in the doorway. I can see them. They're completely passed out.
Right.
So at this moment, they're not doing drugs. And they were at lunch yesterday, and they were not doing drugs there. They were. So we began to just contemplate, and the space opens so widely that we begin to see, like in this case, our children in the light, because when we think they're doing drugs, the ego would lead us to believe it's all the time.
Yes.
Every time they leave the house, that's what they're doing.
And they're leaving the house specifically to go do that. I know.
Absolutely. And it's horrible what we do to ourselves. And so they're not, so this opens up that turnaround. It opens up to no, it's not true. It's like your mom, that doesn't happen to her all the time. Our kids aren't doing drugs all the time, and the one we're talking about now. So then let's see another opposite, another turnaround. Let's see, my daughter's doing drugs. Turn around, I'm doing drugs. Well, no, not me. Okay, let's slow it down. Let's just contemplate that turnaround. I'm doing drugs. Okay, what is it I'm addicted to? Maybe I don't do her drugs.
What am I addicted to?
What am I addicted to? Okay, I can't stay away from the whatever. Maybe it's coffee. Maybe it's prescription drugs that the doctor prescribed 10 years ago that you're still taking, or maybe you're taking 2 of them instead of 1, or what is it? And maybe it's not a substance. What am I addicted to? Am I addicted to anger, loneliness? My daughter's addicted to drugs. I'm addicted to, okay, if it's not drugs, what is it? And maybe it's drugs. And I look at it, I think, oh my gosh, I am addicted to drugs, and it kind of wakes us up to a reality, one way or another. Somewhere we are like our children, but what happens is we begin to feel connected with them and not separate, because we have it in common. Even if it's just my morning coffee, I want to stop. And I just can't stop. I stop 2 or 3 mornings in a row, and then I'm like an addict. I'm right back at it, maybe. So I began to be reachable. Our relationship completely changes. So the power of turnarounds is just it's amazing. And maybe on this Judge Your Neighbor worksheet I pointed to earlier, on the want, what do I want? I want my daughter to wake up. I want my daughter to get help. When I turn those around, and I've seen, let's say it's my coffee in the morning, turned around, I want me to wake up to myself.
I want, yeah.
I want me to, and the direction for me to do it. If I filled in that worksheet, if I've really filled it in, mindfully, then those turnarounds are so powerful. They show me exactly how to do it. And then if my life begins to shift, my children's lives begin to shift because they trust me. They're seeing that I'm not just on their case all the time, that I'm really making changes in my life, and they want to know how to do it. And so basically I'm telling you true stories now. Mm-hmm. When I shifted, my children shifted, my grandchildren shifted.
So in the inquiry and the turnaround, part of what you say is that the only relationship that we can have, the only successful relationship we can have is with ourselves. So that's what I'm hearing as you're describing this turnaround is while we think that we're doing it about somebody else, it is always about us, about us.
And it's about both of us for a while. But then our lives begin to shift so radically from it that begins to switch. And then that next tidal wave comes in to give me something else that I believe against someone or something. And I'm level again with those people that I was so much more enlightened than they were. Mm-hmm. That levels that field again. And it's so beautiful.
Oh, can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. It's like, I'm so happy, I'm so free, and then maybe one of my children break their leg, and I notice I'm not okay with that. Or maybe a dog bites me, and I'm not okay with that. Well, those are my teachers. Dogs bite, children break bones. Mm-hmm. That's the way of it. It's how I react to it. Do I see it as a terrible thing in the world, or am I so much at peace with it, so not afraid of that in the moment that I can be of service? I can serve those things that happen in the world without 1 second of time lapse, where it's about me, and my and me. And
right. Which it tends to be how people react.
Yeah, we're not at our best then.
No,
we we have trouble finding the Band-Aids. We're that upset. Because our mind our mind just flies to the future where, oh my gosh, the dog has rabies, this and that. We're so upset where our heart is pumping blood through the hole in our leg or something. It's like we're not at our best, and we're what we think about, we bring about.
Well, in the human experience, we are always, well, not always, but if you're not doing the investigative process of the work, then generally we're always looking for how can we avoid the pain? How can we fix the pain? How can we make a better plan because that one didn't work?
Yeah, and that's okay, but not out of a fearful state of mind, because we miss so much in that. That's where our minds are so cluttered. We can't see the, we can't see the forest for the trees.
Right. So then,
or the trees for the forest.
The trees for the forest, because you're standing in the middle of it. So Katie, how do you take the work out into the world, so to speak, in dealing with all the world issues and situations that are going on? Because everybody wants to talk about what's going on in the news or around the world or politics or
Yeah.
How do you use that so that you're not getting?
Well, I listen, and if there's anything that upsets me, I know I can't be as useful as I could be otherwise if I'm clear-minded and aware. So anything that bothers me about it, it belongs on a Judge a Neighbor worksheet. And again, those are completely free. And so what I'm thinking and believing about that politician or that situation the government is or is not taking care of, et cetera, the way I would want them to. But I judge the situation or those politicians, for example, on that Judge a Neighbor worksheet, and then I question what I'm believing about them, and it cleans up my life. We begin to see that we're entirely political animals when it comes to running our lives with our family members. It's all about politics. We don't even really know it. But where am I just a dictator in my family? Where am I overruling? Where is it not a democratic process as far as I just veto everything or veto before I have information that I really could use before that could change my vote.
Right.
But so everything is about, when I question it, wakens me up, improves my life and the life of my family.
Well, so let me ask you this, because the other day I was flipping channels, right? And in the United States, the political field is heating up. And here's this person claiming he's going to run for office, and he's giving an apocalyptic view of what's going to happen if we don't vote for him, right? And I'm like, weird. But there are other,
He's also giving an apocalyptic view of what's going to happen if we do vote.
I know, it's fascinating.
It's like, oh my gosh, if I do, oh my gosh, if I don't. It can seem like that to some of us. But I just don't know what I'm going to do before I get to the voting booth. And the closer I listen, the more closely I listen without war in my mind or heart, the more educated I become and the more valid and comfortable I'm going to be with my vote.
Okay, I have to just say what you just said.
And that's all I've got.
The more closely you listen without war in your heart, that's huge, because like this particular individual, it was the whole fear mongering thing, and I could think of a ton of people I know that if they heard this person, they would go, "Yes, I'm voting for him because what he said." I'm like,
and I travel, so I travel. I'm in other countries, and the way I mean, this just affects so much. It's just one voice out there. So it's just, how does my voice affect in my family? Where am I fear-mongering? Where am I vying to be the most respected in my family, at an egoic level? It just all gets down to, where am I like this candidate in my life? Because if oh my gosh, what a world. But
that's interesting to me too, because so with this particular person that was having the conversation on air, I noticed that I didn't have a reaction. I was just fascinated listening to the verbiage, that was being spewed. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of interesting. I didn't react one way or the other. I was just noticing. So that's good, right, Katie, that I didn't get upset?
Yes. You're taking it in. And something will move you when it's needed, because there's no war there.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful example of how you take people in your life. You're open.
Well, thank you.
Well, I just got that from what you said. you just listened and found it interesting, and there was no stress in you. I mean, isn't that just listening and learning and taking it in?
Well, and I got to tell you, it's a lot easier to live life that way than it is getting upset at every turn.
It is. And one thing that I found that I can't do is that one might attempt in the beginning is to try to deny those feelings.
Oh.
You know, they don't find it just interesting like you do. They're trying to just take it in, but inside of them, a lot of denial. And this is experience talking. A lot of denial can be going on, thinking if I can just get that peace, then that's it. But what I'm thinking and believing is going to pop up later in discussion with someone. And,
right.
And so it's always going to show me what's left, which is really delightful because don't we all want to take care of what's left?
Well, hopefully we do.
Yeah.
I know some people that just like to keep putting it under the rug.
Well, you know, I did that for years, and I just didn't know another way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like I was guilty of it. I just did not know another way. I was so doing the best that I could do, and it was so miserable.
Yeah, and I think that what you were saying earlier about, taking like world events and bringing it home, which, how is that, how am I operating in my family of origin or in my current work experience that I can make a difference or a change right here? I don't have to be on the other side of the planet doing something there.
No, because we affect from here.
Mm-hmm.
We affect from here.
Okay, so speak a little bit more about that, Katie.
Well, my job is not to run for a political office as I am sitting there watching the news. My job is here in my home, because this is where I am right now. It's here in my home, dealing with my mind. That's my first home.
Mm-hmm.
And then how my mind affects the way I see my family and live my life with my family. Is there war in my home? Are there arguments? Are the disagreements loud? Are they hurtful? Are they, it sounds like our political system when we look at it. So let me be a peacemaker from here. So I question what I believe against anyone or anything, and then I go back for more.
Well, and I personally believe that the work that I do within myself and the changes I make within myself ripple out and affect anyone that I come into contact with. So if my intention is to be more loving, to be love, then that will affect anybody that I come into contact with, and in a way it kind of gets paid forward, because then that person feels good and that person feels good, down the line.
Yep. It's not a little thing. It's huge. It changes the world.
Yeah,
one thing I love about inquiry is it gives me a way to that's authentic, and so my world changes, and there is no one that is not included in my world, meaning your world or each of us. We all have our own world. No two people see it the same way.
Right.
So we're responsible for ending war in our world, and that's all we can do.
Right, and it starts within ourselves.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because that's where our world is created.
Right. I'm so on board with that. And I just want to share one more thing, another quote from your book, Loving What Is. You say, this work the work, is the end of the world as we understand it to be. And it is the opening to reality as it really is in all its beauty. I love that. I got chills, actually, as I just said that. There are a lot of people out there that don't get that the work starts within us, and we can find that inner touchstone of peace and love.
If we're aware of the war, we're certainly aware of peace, because they're mirror images of other. You can't have one without the other, but you can turn it around.
Right. So I want everybody to know that Byron Katie is doing a workshop on Saturday, August 28th from 9:30 in the morning until 12:30 at the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living, which is located at 101 South Laurel Street in Ventura. And you're going to be doing this work, right?
I'm going to be doing the work, and I love that, and I'm very excited about this event.
Yeah, it's going to be an awesome experience. So I invite you to go to thework.com to check out Byron Katie's work, and then also go to venturacsl.org and find out more about the workshop on August 29th, Saturday, August 29th. Byron Katie, thank you so much for the gift that you are in the world and our time together. I am deeply appreciative.
Oh, thank you, Susan, and thank you for all the good that you pass on through your work. It's so impressive and so beautiful, and I'm so grateful that you're in my world.
Thank you, and vice versa. So I'm just going to finish with, and so it is, namaste.